Just first, I guess, talk about how you got into coaching and when you kind of first got the coaching bug and first couple jobs that you had.
Um, I started kind of 17, 18 years old with an uncle that, while I was playing still, that just sort of showed a little bit of interest in me and asked me if I was interested in helping at, minor hockey practices and things along those lines, and sort of help to, some of the grassroots level teams at Adam Pee Wee sort of ages and continued to finish my playing days. And once I was done that, it was sort of a quick, easy transition, really. Um, I started out as an assistant coach and sort of worked my way up. And I had some cousins and friends that did it and sort of worked with them at the beginning. And my first, I guess, high level coaching job as an assistant would have been with Southside Athletic Club, minor midget AAA. The following season, Matt Bakowicz, you're probably familiar with him, got the head coach job with the major midget AAA team at the Southside level. And all of the coaches sort of moved up, and it sort of left me in a position where I had to do my own thing or stop coaching, or I had a decision to make. So I actually was going to stop coaching. And one of my friends applied for a coach job that he wasn't that interested in, and sort of, it's a really strange story, but sort of, forced me to come to the interview. And I went to the interview and decided that I was going to coach that team. And that was midget double A, and that's sort of how it started. That was my first head coach job.
How old were
Um,
you then?
I was mid 20s. I can't remember exactly how old I
Yeah.
was. That was yeah, I would have been mid 20s. So sort of yeah, just getting my feet wet with that. Really challenging level, a really good level to learn.
Yeah, I agree. I did it a year too, and honestly, like I look back, it might be the year that I think I probably learned the most as a coach,
Yeah,
coaching midget double A.
yeah. Why would you say that?
I think just you have so many different personalities there. Like you have your 16-year-olds that want to play junior, still want to play AAA at 17. Then you have the 17-year-olds that probably know that they're going to play junior B the next year if they decide to play. They're going to school. So like
Yeah,
they're kind of in their last little hurrah for hockey. So I think you have to find ways to kind of get those two different, I guess, types of players to work together and
yeah,
try and work towards the same common goal. And I think it's different at that level than at like AAA per se, because at AAA everybody wants to play junior. That's why they're there.
yeah,
But double A, I found it was just you had to really build relationships with players, especially those older guys, and really try and get them to buy in and motivate them and just kind of I found like I learned that it's more than just hockey and how do you get these guys to see that,
yeah,
uh, but to all be pulling on the same rope. I really enjoyed it, and I it was
yeah,
the same kind of thing. Like I was really reluctant to do it at first, and then they just kind of begged me to do it. And I was like, yeah, okay, what the hell, I'll do it, and it was awesome.
yeah.
I
No,
really,
my experience was very similar. I struggled at times with the lack of commitment and
Mhm.
dedication from some people, but um, I sort of looked back at my own hockey, journey and what was important to me when I look back, and what I wanted to be remembered for as a coach, and that making it fun and enjoyable. And like you said, creating an environment where, whether you're a guy that wants to play midget triple the next year, or, you were going to stop playing and go to school, or just continue with double A, junior B, whatever that looked like.
yeah.
I wanted to just, you had to find a way to create an environment where the guys enjoyed playing for you.
Hmm.
Um, and that was a rewarding feeling. If you could, again, that's a challenging group to really convince that, this, again, like you said, it's more than hockey.
Yeah.
Um, and being able to do that that's rewarding
Yeah.
because not everybody's capable of doing that. It's a
Yeah.
tough level to get through to guys.
It is.
And
I think it's the toughest level to get through
yeah,
to this. Yeah.
yeah, no, I agree with that. It's similar. I would say it's along the same lines as junior B in some ways,
Yeah.
in terms of commitment. Um, yeah, things like that. Guys
Yeah.
are on the edge of not playing, and yeah, no, I agree with those things. Yeah, I learned a lot at double A too. That was my first head coach job, so I was learning a ton.
Yeah.
Um, and after that, I coached minor midget for 2 years. I was probably, in hindsight, looking back, I probably wasn't ready for that. Just being, completely honest with myself.
Yeah.
But again, being put in a position where I was outside of my comfort zone, I just put a tremendous amount of work into it based on that. I
Yeah.
knew that I was maybe a little underqualified or not quite ready for it. And I wasn't going to, put myself in a spot where I wasn't going to do the work. I did extra work. I did extra research. I was more than prepared that way. And I think because of that, I think it was fine. Um,
Mhm.
Following that season, I looked at Bantam as a little more of an elite level stream just based on the fact that the top 13, 14-year-olds are in that league. So I took the Bantam triple job when it became available for 2 years. And then same with midget, it came available after those 2 years. I had a lot of success in Bantam. Really weak team my first year, a sort of a development year for our whole group.
Mhm.
Really strong year my second year. I was really fortunate. I got coach of the year my second year. Randall Weber had moved on to OHA. He's currently the GM of OHA Edmonton. So I took the midget triple job. And same thing. I had a great group of guys that it made coaching a lot of fun. We had a lot of success. And yeah, same thing. I had a lot of success as a coach based on that. And the opportunities were, continue to be provided to me. And I sort of just continued to jump on them and try and learn and absorb as much information as possible. And I had conversations with Jay McKee initially. He ended up taking the Vancouver Giants job later in that process. So I was a little unsure where I was left in all of that. And eventually Mike Ringrose called me, and I eventually took that job. That was an emotional time for me because I really, really enjoyed my time in Leduc. Like, I was very grateful, and they did a lot for me. There was times where people didn't believe I was capable of doing it,
Yeah.
and I was, I continued to, like I said before, to just I was always going to do extra. I was always going to the work ethic side of it. I was going to do more than the next guy, and that
Yeah.
was my attitude. So, yeah, I kind of went to junior from there. Again, a little bit uncertain. I was sort of a sponge my first year, learning a ton, a lot of detail, a lot of information. Obviously, a different level of person, athlete, in general, just a very, very high level. So I learned a ton my first year from Mike and John Glenn and that whole group
Mhm.
in Spruce Grove. Following that, I was a little unsure. We had an ownership change in Spruce. Everybody moved on. Ringrose and John Glenn and the whole crew, scouting all the way through.
Yeah.
They were it was clear they were moving on, and it was time for them. And I didn't really know where I stood in that process. And I actually applied for the position. Up until that point, it was a position that they, were sort of hiring within. They were
Yeah.
promoting within the program for years and years and years. And I was the first coach that, I guess, that changed. I applied for the job and didn't get it. So it was a little bit of a discouraging. For the first time in a while, I was at a point where, a little bit of adversity for me
Yeah.
and a little disappointed. A lot of feelings along those lines. Unsure what that meant for me. Obviously, Bram ended up getting the coaching job, and he's a fantastic person and fantastic coach. And reached out to me, and I made him aware that I was, after some time to really process all the things that have gone on. And I looked at it as a learning opportunity for myself. He's obviously very successful coach with Grant McEwen, and
Yeah.
uh, I looked at it as after having a real opportunity to reflect. Being with the Spruce Grove Saints, having a chance to work with Bram, just a real good opportunity. So I stuck with that. And ended up going really well,
Yeah.
really, really well. Mike, Ringrose, Bram, Steven, both completely different coaches, both excellent coaches, extremely knowledgeable guys.
And
Very.
didn't they just swap? Like, didn't Ringrose, did he go to Grant Mac?
Yeah, he did. They did. They did end up swapping, yeah, and both ended up having a tremendous amount of success, which is, I guess, what you want. So,
Mhm.
yeah, no, a really, really good coaching experience. I learned a lot from both coaches, and again, very different styles. Sort of took kind of different pieces
Yeah.
of both those experiences, and yeah, I can continue, I guess, going with it.
Yeah.
Um, Halfway through, I guess, in November of my second year with Bram, I I had an opportunity. Obviously, Joey Bouchard was hired as they ended up releasing their head coach in Drayton Valley. They were 2-21, just 2-20 to start the year,
Oof.
and so they released their head coach. Then they announced that they were hiring Joey Bouchard as a general manager of the team. I Obviously I was really interested in general, naturally, um, and Joey actually reached out to me initially and had mentioned that he'd spoken with a lot of people and he had made a list of coaches that he had sort of shortlisted, and I was one of those guys. So I
Mhm.
interviewed with him and his wife and his at the time just a daughter, and now he's got a couple kids. But I interviewed a few times, like 2 or 3 times, and they were more along the lines of a character interview.
And this
Um,
was while you were in Spruce Grove?
this is while I was in Spruce Grove.
Yeah.
So obviously, throughout that process, I got the blessing of Spruce Grove to speak with Joey,
Yeah.
and I wasn't doing this behind the scenes. I did it in as respectful as
Yeah.
possible. But yeah, that's sort of the process. And then at some point, Joey, had called me back and let me know that if I was interested, it was a position that he was willing to give to me. And then there was other things, obviously, to negotiate, financials, and at the time the expectation was that you had to move to Drayton Valley, so there's a commitment there. And
Yeah.
um, talking with my wife, I decided that I was never really afraid to make those decisions and chase something that I was passionate about. I always had the attitude that if you can fail at something you're not good at. So,
Yeah.
you certainly need to take chances and pursue something that you love.
Yeah.
So that was my attitude. And, there was some things that were, I guess there was some red flags. And I thought, throughout the interview process that those things were addressed at the time. So at the end of the day, I looked at it as an opportunity to make a name for myself. And it was building a team from the ground up. And that was exciting.
Hmm.
I was going to be able to do it my way. At the time I thought I was.
What were
And
some of those red flags that you kind of came across throughout the recruiting or interview process?
well, I mean, from an outsider standpoint, there was always a perception that there was some internal issues in Drayton Valley.
Right.
It wasn't at the time that I made the move from Spruce Grove to DV, the program wasn't in a great place. That was the perception,
Yeah.
for several reasons. On ice results, obviously being the main one. But yeah, at the time there was a new ownership group. There was several kids on the team, two in particular, and I wanted some answers there. I was deciding on leaving a program with a tremendous culture, um,
Yeah. No kidding.
and obviously a very good situation for myself. I had a good job at the time, coaching with the Spruce Grove Saints. I mean, I could speak about that for a long, long time. So I needed to know that there was, an opportunity for me to go in and have, um, full reins to some degree,
Yeah.
and I didn't feel like if we were going to have, 2 or 3 players on a team that weren't capable of playing at that level, that I was going to be able to accomplish that
Yeah.
for many reasons. And at the time I was given the impression that it would be a short-term thing and it would be something that would, you know, we would make better. And as time went on, I realized, that wasn't the case. And from a coaching standpoint, it was a fantastic learning experience for me. Like again, I was pushed into a position where I was outside my comfort zone and excited to do the work. I
Yeah.
was passionate. I had the time. I had learned a ton from Bram and Mike about the game at that level. I also, had a lot of knowledge that I was excited to really implement and to make my own.
Hmm.
And it was really good. Like I absolutely loved coaching hockey full time. I do not regret it at all for that reason. There's nothing better than showing up to the rink early in the morning and
Yeah.
yeah, and spending your whole day there.
Yeah.
And the experience was very good. We had a lot of team success. It was a lot of work. Like when I got there, it was pretty much exactly as advertised.
Yeah.
Starting with, ownership having kids on the team, to not having team sticks, to not having a skate sharpener, to the condition of the facility, to not having music for warm-ups, to not, I know a lot of people might listen to this and think that, oh, those things are superficial. They don't matter, but everything matters. That was
Yeah.
the attitude that I had.
Yeah.
That was the type of program that I was coming from,
Mm-hmm.
that the detail, there's no such thing as an unimportant detail. And that
Yeah.
was the attitude that I tried to take with me,
Yeah.
and the experience that I wanted to share ultimately. I didn't want to go into it and have an attitude where, I'm entitled to this and I know this and you don't know. I just wanted to share my experience
Yeah.
and introduce some things that I, was lucky enough to be a part of, and the culture in general. Like I got there and it was like there was an acceptance beyond what I could ever imagine. Like the team was 2-21, and you would never know it.
Really.
Like you walk into a dressing room and guys are smiling and they're laughing and having fun and going out for drinks, and
Just
everything looked,
comfortable with losing.
everything looked, you would have never known.
Mm-hmm.
And they were extremely upset with the fact that their coach had been relieved. Some of our guys had his initials on the knob of the stick, and
Oh boy.
there was some real challenges, like real challenges.
So how did you get around stuff like that at the first, like just even the first 2 weeks that you're there with the team?
The first 2 weeks, I would say that, oh, that's a good question. It was about that early development of relationships and convincing them that, I understand on one hand that you had a good relationship with the previous coach, and I'm not going to ignore that because it's important. But at the same time, you need to be fair and understand that I'm here
Yeah.
to help you get better and to help our team improve. And I need to be able to, I need your full buy-in and commitment to that. So that's sort of how the road that I took. I'm here to help you. Here's what I'm about. Here's who I am. Here's what I believe. I certainly think I have a lot to offer you as a person, you as a player, and this team.
Yeah.
And, for the guys that weren't accepting of that, there were some guys that we obviously that weren't. There were some guys that left before I got there. There were some guys that were reluctant to listen to me based on their relationship with the previous coach, et cetera. And some of those guys we had to move on. And that was part of changing the culture. And yeah, I would say that that's sort of where I started.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, it's about, I had to obviously develop some trust with them and show them that I was willing to put the work in and beyond,
Yeah.
and introduce some new things. And just, again, I wanted to shock the culture. I wanted to let them know that what's going on right now is you're capable of a lot more,
Yeah.
and collectively we need to come to terms with that, and make a commitment to each other that we're going to fix this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of where I started. And yeah, it got really good. I actually had a great group of guys. If I'm being honest, we brought a few guys in. For those that know Joey, he's got a very strong relationship with the Quebec area, and we brought a few really talented hockey players in from that area, and they really helped our team.
Mm-hmm.
We brought some challenging personalities. I think rebuilding, I was in a position where I needed to accept some challenging personalities, some guys they're real hockey players, but
Yeah.
but I needed to work on the personal side of it, and that really helped me as a coach. Like I had to work with some personalities that were very difficult and at times, and challenged me as a coach. And I feel like I got a lot out of a lot of people, even some of the difficult ones.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a player from Quebec that really didn't have a good reputation in the QMJHL, any level that he had played at, and he was sort of moving out of that level. And we brought him in. His name was Felix Mounier, and I say his name because the experience actually was a positive one. At the start, it was very negative. He would, a very very offensively gifted player. played with a lot of flair, took some bad penalties, and I held him accountable. Like I didn't accept it. And he would look at me and, he'd go, coach, I don't sit. And I'm like, okay, well, this is how I run things. And then he'd sit and kind of give it to me a little bit. And I accepted that. And he'd come out in the third period and get a hat trick
Mm-hmm.
and come in to the dressing room after the game and go, thanks for doing that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So things like that. That a lot of coaches at the junior level at some stage in the development process wouldn't put up with. I was sort of in a position where our team wasn't doing well. We were trying to rebuild the culture. I had to accept some of those things. And in hindsight, it turned out to be a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
That was just one example. I had a lot of really good people, like a lot of excellent examples. Vincent Beaudry, another guy from Quebec, excellent hockey player. Ended up being a point a game guy for me by the end of the year. Marc-Antoine Benoit, same thing. We brought him in from Whitecourt, pretty fragile when I got him. Came from Gord Thibodeau. Gord Thibodeau's kind of an in-your-face, very honest, has a very high expectation, hard on guys. He didn't really necessarily respond very well to that type of coaching. And with me, I sort of brought him under, I was very honest still. But at the same time, I understood that he needed a certain type of person. He needed he needed to have somebody in his corner that, created a little bit of confidence, a sense of belief. And I needed to build him up a little bit. And by the end of the year, he was the same thing. Very, very, very offensively productive guy.
Mm-hmm.
Helped our team a lot, but challenging from a coaching standpoint.
Yeah.
A very lazy guy without the puck, something that we talked about daily, something that he bought into and got better at. So.
Did you find like in the, I guess, first couple months that you're there, like just feeling overwhelmed? Because obviously you're coming into a situation that culture needs to be rebuilt. The team is struggling. So you're trying to bring in new players, get rid of players that don't fit, but then trying to fix things on ice in terms of structure or buy-in or whatever it is and make the team competitive again. Like you're kind of like you're having to rebuild an entire program from scratch in mid-season.
Well, there was a few things that were working in my favor. I had Joey Bouchard as my GM, very
Mm-hmm.
organized, very smart man. He had a very, very good, you're a part of that, a very good supporting cast, from him to scouting to coaches I had a lot of excellent people surrounding me,
Yeah.
which made it a lot easier at some points. But you're right, at the start, it's extremely challenging. You're trading some guys that aren't buying in. You're bringing in new guys. I tried to just focus on it day by day.
Mm-hmm.
I had a very specific plan in place every day. And that's sort of how I approached it, sort of task by task, one thing at a time. We had a huge list of things that we knew weren't good enough.
Yeah.
And Joey and I were in constant conversation about those things. We talked in the morning, in the afternoon, on my drive home from Drayton to Leduc. It was something that we worked at, again, day by day, task by task, and just sort of picked away at it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of the approach that we took. I thought that it was, it took some time. It wasn't something that, I won my first 2 games and it had nothing to do with coaching. It had nothing to do with scheme or my value system, anything. My first game that I showed up to coach, I didn't really even implement anything. And I think we got outplayed by Sherwood Park and got outshot 50-20 and won. Like we won 6-4 in my first game and had no business playing. Like had no business winning.
Yeah.
And my goalie at the time, played out of his mind. And I implemented some habits and some core values but nothing. I didn't go in and reinvent the wheel and say we're running this D zone and running this neutral zone. I want to learn about you guys as people, and I want to learn about the way that you play, and that's what I'm going to do today.
Yeah.
And it was that's sort of the response I got. We won our first 2 games just me doing that, to be honest, not completely flipping it. And then once we got a full week of practice and meetings, and when I had a real opportunity to sit down and dissect and begin that process, that's when I chose to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's sort of what that looked like.
Was there like for your decision to do that, like kind of come in slow for the first couple games? Was that something that like you just kind of was a gut feeling when you got there, or was there like support system around you that it kind of said like go slow with I guess changing things structurally, or you just didn't have the time in the beginning?
No, I think it was just something that I decided on.
Yeah.
Uh, I just didn't see the. I mean, obviously, previous experience. I had maybe there was a time and a place where I did things too fast.
Yeah.
I'll be the first to admit that. But I just wanted to again. I just wanted to. I didn't want to shock everybody's system. I didn't want to
Mhm.
be. I didn't want to show up to the rink and make it about me.
Yeah.
I wanted to earn a little bit of respect and trust, and just coach during the game.
Yeah.
That's show up and say, I don't really know what you've done in the past. I don't know a lot of you. You don't know much about me. I want to learn about you the first couple games and take it slow and really make sure that I'm not skipping steps, right?
Yeah.
And doing it the right way. And that was important when I look back at it, because you see a lot these days, especially there's so much video and it's such a rush. It's
Mhm.
such a panic to implement systems, and they need to know, right? That's the way that things are now. Everyone needs to know,
Yeah.
and it's uncomfortable for some people. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. Well, maybe it doesn't matter
Yeah.
right now. Maybe it doesn't matter right now, and that's sort of the attitude that I took. And there were certainly players that were like, "Hey, man, like, what are we doing on the power play?" And the first few games, I'm like, "What do I want you to run what you've ran the past, 2 months." And this week when we have a chance to actually dive into it, we're going to dive into
Hmm.
it. And I thought that it was good.
Yeah.
There was a little bit of a sense of comfort, I guess. There was an added sense of urgency and purpose from them because it was a new coach. So
Yeah.
naturally, it was sort of a good. It naturally, it was really good. So we were able to win our first two games as well. So it was nice way to start things off.
Then where did it go?
I thought that we were really building. Like we went from a team that every team expected to beat.
Hmm.
All of a sudden, we were a team that could surprise you if you didn't show up, and that was sort of the attitude that I tried to really, um, I guess, convince the players of.
Yeah.
Every time that you show up the rink, you have a chance to surprise a team. And this isn't a knock on you as a person, it isn't a knock on you as a player or a team. It's just that's the reality of where we're at.
Yeah.
And we sort of embraced that and started to, and obviously we brought some good players in, and that helped. And um, and all of a sudden we were a team that if a team showed up and they weren't prepared, we beat them. We started to score a lot more. We still gave up a lot of goals. But yeah, we started to compete with some of the top teams.
Hmm.
We beat Okotoks had won 24 games in a row that season.
Wow.
We beat them in a shootout. We went into one of my most fond memories was Fort Mac was competing with Spruce Grove for first place, and obviously I still had a really good relationship with the guys in Spruce Grove, and we went into Fort Mac, which at the time was still a tough place to play, and we won both games. I think we won 3-2 in over or 3-2 and then 4-3 in overtime,
Hmm.
and then walked onto the bus and left Fort Mac. That was and I had lots of emails and texts from my buddies in Spruce saying thank you for you know things of that nature. But that was one of my fondest memories. Again, we just sort of embraced the challenge. No one expects you to beat good teams,
Hmm.
and that should drive you to show up to the rink every day and want to get better and prove people wrong. So I really dialed myself into that and really tried to convince the players that you're capable of a lot of good things here if you choose to
Yeah.
commit yourself to it. So
Was that I think I remember just being on the bus with our team and flipping through the AJ scores and seeing that weekend that you guys were in Fort Mac. So you take over this team that has 2 wins in their first 20 some games. Then you're in Fort Mac, tough place to play. You win both those. So obviously things are turning around. I guess just what were things like then? Guys, I imagine, are starting to buy in, but then you still have the ownership stuff, and I guess just kind of where things went from there.
I had to make a decision once I got there and truly understood what the situation was like with ownership and the two boys. I had to make a decision. Either I was going to be compliant and maybe not have success, maybe have success unknown,
Mm-hmm.
or I was going to stay true to myself, my belief system, who I was for the other 23 guys,
Yeah.
21 after Christmas. And I chose to stay true to myself, even though I knew it was going to likely result in me not being there long term.
Mm-hmm.
I had a 3-year deal, which really doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Um, but when I decided to go all in and I made that decision, I sort of, was putting myself in a position long term, where it wasn't going to be a good long term fit. And I still chose to do it because I knew it in my heart. I knew it was the right choice,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew that, I had 23 other guys that were going to appreciate it
Yeah.
and that were going to get better. That were going to look back at the whole experience and go, I really appreciate that he did that,
Yeah.
and that meant enough to me that it was worth doing it. And from that point on, I was making decisions where, ownership was saying my boys need to play, and they were in the stands. Like I was in a position where there was some days in Drayton Valley where ownership was threatening to come down into the dressing room, and I basically stood there and said, if you come down, bring your suit and your tie because I'm gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I had tremendous support from my, again from the GM Joey and all our scout, like everybody was behind me other than that. And
Yeah.
that really helped me. And it made me, it really motivated me to continue with it. And then the success that our team was starting to have, that obviously played into it.
Yeah.
On and on and on. Right. But even along the way, while we were having those successes, I still had to deal with,
Really.
those two players coming in and going, why am I not playing? Or that was really, it was a challenge. And I was just very transparent and honest. Like you're going to have to earn your way. Like it's
Yeah.
nothing, everything is earned and nothing is given. And, it doesn't matter who you are or, what your name is or how many points you have or,
Yeah.
so that's the attitude that I took, even though I knew inevitably it was maybe not going to work out that well for me in terms of my relationship with ownership, but I was going to do it the right way.
Mm-hmm.
I was too proud to do it any other way.
Yeah.
So
Well, and you have to do what's best for the entire team, and like you said, sometimes situations like that it comes at your own expense. But yeah, like you said, you could have done it for two guys or 23.
yeah, and I've only really talked in detail with my coaching colleagues in Spruce and close friends and close family, but it was an excellent experience, but it was extremely challenging. Like there's some things that went on that again I've communicated with my assistant coach the last few days to make sure that he's comfortable with me sharing some of these stories because he was a big part of it.
Mm-hmm.
I inherited an assistant coach, great guy, a players coach. Players loved the guy. I really enjoyed him too. He had some off ice, challenges. He ended up relapsing. He had an alcohol issue during the season, or around the Christmas, just after Christmas, and for like a couple weeks, I was the only guy coaching the team, and that was really challenging.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up getting, one of our guys in charge of spring camp and player development, Travis Gibson, ended up coming and being my assistant coach from that time forward. And it was outstanding and really good friend of mine to this day. And just challenges like that, really hard to deal with. And another thing for the players to deal with.
Yeah.
There was, when I look back at that season, if I'm just putting myself aside for a minute, the things that some of those players had to go through was like, it was unbelievable. They from having a coach relieved early on in the season to having a new coach come in to having one coach in the run practice to one coach on the bench to me resigning at the end of the year. Two owners, kids in the team that aren't capable of playing at that level, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
There was a tremendous amount of hurdles and adversity and you name it.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a tremendous amount of respect for all the guys that I did have in that dressing room that went through that and stuck with it and are still playing or kept playing. And, for the guys that didn't, I have respect for those guys too. I get that it was a challenging, it's not for everybody, like that type of situation. And I kind of showed that too. At the end of the year, I had to make a really important decision for myself and my family. And, I decided that it wasn't, ultimately I had a rental property hooked up in Drayton. I was going to had renters for my house in Leduc. I was ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I pulled shoot knowing that it was it wasn't right. It wasn't the right decision. I didn't believe in what was going on. And, it was the best decision for me as a coach and my family was to move on. And that's sort of that's sort of where my decision came from. As much fun and is the amount that I learned and on and on and on. There's a tremendous amount of positive to it. I don't regret it.
Mm-hmm.
In hindsight, I learned a ton. In terms of where I'm coaching now, in some ways I regret it a little bit. If I would have stayed in Spruce Grove and continued to be an assistant coach, where would I be today?
Yeah.
I don't know. Those are things I don't know the answer to. But I still would encourage somebody if they asked me to take that leap of faith and do it.
Mm-hmm.
I still learned a tremendous amount about myself as a coach, about the level. And there's more, the positives outweigh the negatives.
Yeah.
In terms of my development as a coach. So, so that's kind of that. I'm probably missing some details. It was really tough. Like towards the end, I had my car packed. I'm showing up to the rink. I'm coaching junior hockey. It's my full-time job. I got a newborn driving from Leduc to Drayton. To put in perspective, I'm doing what's best for 23 guys. I don't know if I'm going to get fired today. I don't know if the ownership group's going to come in and run the bench and say, like, I had an exit plan ready for a month and a half. That's not a healthy.
No. Yeah.
It's not a healthy environment and situation to be a part of. And I did my best to manage it, manage those emotions and try to stay focused on what matters because the players deserve that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what kept me going is there's 23 guys that deserve my best every day.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can give that to them till the last day and make a decision, that's what I'm going to do. So as hard as there was days, trust me, man, where I was like, this is not this is not a healthy situation.
Yeah.
And some people might look at it as you quit. I don't look at it that way. Anybody who knows me knows that I don't quit. I don't stop doing things unless it's that was a huge life decision and I made it based on real information, real facts that matter.
Yeah.
And and I felt terrible doing it. Again, that's another thing to add to the players. I had another thing for the players to deal with. Like I had players bawling. And you probably dealt with that a little bit this year. I had players absolutely bawling, and it wasn't necessarily because I was leaving, but you could see it pouring out of them.
Yeah.
They were like what they had gone through.
Yeah.
That's what hurt more than anything.
Yeah.
Myself aside is like, look at what these young men have dealt with, like a tremendous amount in one season, and then, obviously Thirsty came in and he's done a fantastic job. And, that situation was a little different for him. And I have, nothing but respect for him and it's all good. So.
Yeah. No, I think like not similar situations, I guess, but for me, that was the hardest part too, is just seeing these kids, young men having to go through stuff that's unfair. They shouldn't have to go through, and it's just for the betterment of two guys or two families that are there for the wrong reasons. And that was for me the hardest part for sure.
Yeah, no, I know that you sort of lived something similar, so I understand and appreciate where you're coming from and what you dealt with. So
No, likewise. So I guess that ended. I guess just kind of what was the off season like after that? I imagine that was hard, obviously a hard decision for yourself and the family. Um, did you find like did you lose the passion at all for hockey or coaching, or did you get back into it right away?
Um, it was sort of a like I was sad to be leaving a head coach position.
Hmm.
You're leaving your career, your life up in the air a little bit. But it was a feel good thing for me because it was relief. It was an opportunity for me to exhale.
Yeah.
I was extremely proud and happy with what I had accomplished and what I had done and what I had learned and the people I met, from Joey Bouchard to, you know, Nicolette's to you name it. There's a tremendous amount of positives. So I left with it being a very feel good sort of situation in a lot of ways. And right away, I was talking to Bram and Rob Sklaruk and the Lakelts and that whole group in Spruce Grove, and they were immediately like, that's a tough. You were in a tough spot, and we respect what you did, and we believe that bringing you back helps our team.
Hmm.
Was sort of along the lines of what Bram had said, and we're going to talk to our leadership group and talk to our guys because it was, that mattered. They need to be open and accepting of you coming back because
Yeah.
it's their team, and I completely respected that. And I was extremely fortunate. The players were very supportive of me returning to help, and I wasn't on the bench. I was, a part of everything else, essentially
Yeah.
on the ice for practice and involved in everything but that. And I was very fortunate. I was really happy to drive to Spruce Grove again,
Yeah.
um, for many reasons. But it was very nice to show up to the rink, the Grant Fuhr, and see familiar faces and be back in that in that culture. And it was just refreshing.
Hmm.
It was exciting to be back, and that obviously that playoff run and was fantastic. That team was very special, and it sort of brought me back and really made me appreciate what it meant to be a part of something so special. And
Hmm.
I got a chance to go to. We won the Alberta Junior League against a very good Okotoks team in 5 games, which was remarkable.
Hmm.
We went to Washington to play in the Doyle, which was really, really cool experience against a really, really good team. And that was the end of our journey, but it was, it was awesome. Yeah, a very talented group.
Yeah.
Beyond that, very, very good people. Like from the ownership group to Rob Sklaruk to the skills coaches to Bram to Derek Martin and trainers, you name it, man. Like it's first class.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's first class all the way.
Yeah, I had Woke was on here last week, and we just talked about like just how culture can be kind of a buzzword in hockey sometimes until you're actually in a place of really good culture like Spruce Grove, and then you really realize the value and how important it is. And like Woke said, he's like it's from the top down, from the
Yeah,
ownership down to
yeah,
every single person involved feels like they matter, feels like they have a role, and that they're a part of it. And I
yeah,
think that's, obviously part of why that program's been sustained success for so long.
yeah, yeah. I think we all would admit that. I mean, obviously the players they play the biggest role. You got
Hmm.
good players. That being said, like you need to, it's not easy to coach good players.
No,
That's my argument. It's not always easy to
no.
coach a group of players that have, you know, all been on the first line or played at the highest level. And,
Yeah,
it's that mix can be challenging. So
yeah,
it's obviously a benefit to have good players, but there's certain challenges that you know are presented when you have a group like that. But we were, again, it goes back to, like you said, having a good culture,
yeah,
focusing on having good people first, good teammates, good people, then good players. That's sort of the attitude that we took, and very fortunate that we had a dressing room full of guys that oozed character.
yeah.
So
That's awesome. So I guess we'll just move on a couple other things here before we go. Just over the years, you're back in Leduc coaching the major midget team. Doing a great job there. I guess just in your journey through coaching, how have you noticed things evolving in terms of your role? How players have changed, how managing them has changed in relationships, with parents as well. I guess just from start of your career to I guess where you're at now, just how things have kind of changed and evolved.
Well, if I'm only going back to my first experience coaching midget AAA to where I'm at now, which is a 5-year window,
Hmm.
the biggest changes that I see are more off ice. You have more to do. Like you have
Okay.
more to worry about. You have more to think about and consider. 5 years ago, you had a zone. The sports school league wasn't, um, as well renowned and popular as it is now and large. So you really, like, you had a certain zone. Your players showed up to your camp. They tried out for you, and that was it.
Yeah.
There wasn't as much. It's a lot closer to junior hockey now at midget trip, starting in Bantam, maybe even younger. You've got advisors and you've got options. Kids have options and alternatives, and there's this league and that league and this team and that team, and as a coach, you need to be on top of that.
Hmm.
You need to, if you have a blind eye to it, you might be in a situation where, and some of these situations are unavoidable, even if you're on top of it. But you might have a situation where guys are being recruited and they're leaving your program, and you don't even know what's happening.
Yeah.
So that never used to happen. The sport is more expensive. When you're talking about parents, that plays into it. Whenever somebody is paying to play, there's certain challenges there. Um, I've learned with parents that I think a lot of coaches at a parent meeting, as an example, they go into it trying to insulate themselves from the parent group,
Hmm.
try and create some type of, I'm the coach. Here's what I believe in. Here's the expectation for you as a parent, and move on.
Hmm.
Where, like, I've evolved as a coach to the point, at least in midget, where I try to include them in the culture to the fullest degree, so they have a real understanding of who I am.
Yeah.
And stay true to myself and explain to them, here's what you're getting and here's what our culture looks like, so that when I'm not naive enough to think that I get enough time with these players that I can make an impact. I need to be smart enough to understand that 90% of the time they spend is at home with mom and dad.
Yeah.
So those conversations at the dinner table and before practice, after practice, on the way home from games, whether I want to admit it or not, whether I care or not, those things matter. So in junior, you don't have to worry about those things as much. You know, the parents are a part of it, but most of them, they get it,
Yeah.
and they're positive and supportive, and that's what you're getting.
Yeah.
In midget, there's some challenges, and I pay to play, and I feel like I'm deserving and entitled to this, and then just times in general have changed. I think players now, they want to know, and you've experienced this firsthand. They want to know why. They don't want to know that know, you know, you've experienced this and you know how to run a D zone or a neutral zone or an offensive zone, system. They want to know why they're doing it. Why is this going to benefit me?
Hmm.
What are you going to do for me? And that is the attitude that I've seen the biggest change
Yeah.
from like 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, where it used to be very, I'm not going to say that kids have lost respect, but it's just changed.
Yeah.
It used to be like, I'm going to listen to my coach. I'm going to do what my coach says and move on. Now it's just the game is evolving. People are changing. There, I don't know. There's skills coaches. There's mental coaches. There's, on and on and on.
I think there's just
Um,
so much information out there for players, at their disposal and whatever the environment is that I think there's just when you're doing something as their coach and it's maybe different than what they've done or what they know, it's right away their first thing is to question, yeah,
sure.
why are we doing this?
Yeah.
Which I don't think is a bad thing either if you can
No.
manage it, like getting them to understand why. And usually, I guess for, I'm sure you've had the same experiences, but when you're able to do that, it's, oh yeah, okay. That makes sense. And
100%.
you get them thinking about it a little bit more, but I know, yeah, it is different for sure than it was, yeah, years ago. It used to never have players coming in saying like, hey, what do you think about this, or why are we doing this? Now it seems to be all the time.
Yeah, no, I think the why piece of it is, and again, that's sort of become a little bit of a cliche too,
Hmm.
another buzzword. But you're 100% right. I think they need to know why, and if you can give them that, and I think good coaches can
Yeah.
naturally, if you
Yeah.
put the work in and you've got a plan in place when you show up to the rink. I think it's there for the players.
Hmm.
Everything's in front of them, and if they have a question, I think it's easy to provide them with that information. So I agree with you.
Oh, for sure. Okay, a couple last things. I had heard from a person you work with. You're the most prepared coach he's ever seen. So I guess just kind of talk about that, the kind of work that goes into it, and where you, I guess, kind of learn those habits and carry them on from.
Well, my first year in Spruce Grove, I feel like I've always been as prepared as I can be. Um, my first year in Spruce Grove, I learned a ton about that side of it.
Mhm.
Um, I think it started with McKee, and um, obviously Mike was a big part of what's going on in Spruce Grove during his time there, and then having a chance to work with him and see the amount of work that goes into it, and the amount of detail and structure and just all of it, and seeing the benefit to it. It can be too much at times. I feel like maybe it's, especially coming back to midget. If I'm going to speak on that specifically, that experience, I've certainly had to dial things back because it can be, you don't want to overwhelm the players with information. I think that can be a really, that can set you back as a team in a significant way.
Mhm.
So I've been, forced to go back to simple details in a lot of ways. But I just think it's a feel good thing to at obviously doing things at the right speed and doing things at the right time matter. But I think it's a feel good thing for everybody if you have a plan
Yeah.
and everybody understands it, and it's a feel good thing from a coaching standpoint. Players like we just discussed want to know those things.
Mhm.
Um, I just don't feel good about myself if I'm not prepared and I'm not putting everything I have into it. How can I go into the dressing room and demand that from my players?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I again, I've learned that from a lot of people along the way. Who did you talk to at my that I work with?
Well, you might know after his I guess just the last question I'll ask is from him as well. For listeners that don't know, the Airdrie Arena has the worst bench setup in all of
Oh boy,
Alberta. Those huge pillars that are on the bench that you have to look around to talk to your coaches.
yeah.
This guy wants me to ask you about playing in the Airdrie Arena when you're yelling at your D coach trying to look around the huge pillars that are on the bench there.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I hadn't played in that Airdrie Arena since Bantam actually, and that's a good point. Those benches are
Oh,
something else.
brutal.
Um, you know what though? Like there's rinks in junior hockey. Like Canmore's not much different.
No.
But you're right. It's certainly a little bit of adversity for coaching staff to have to look around those huge pillars. And but no, it's all good. I don't know. I don't have an issue with it at all.
Yeah.
Um,
Is there
it provides a little bit of insulation for my defensive coach.
is there a story there? Jonesy said you were yelling at the D coach there one day.
Oh, I've coached with Jonesy for a long time, so regretfully, I probably yelled at him too many times. He's got thick skin, and we're good friends. So he knows me well enough to know that I don't mean anything by it, and I don't mean any offense. I'm just a
Oh,
fiery, competitive guy by nature. So I can't remember exactly what I would have said, but usually Jonesy has an answer that puts me in my place. So
I love coaching against you guys because like we're both so competitive and you guys are pretty vocal sometimes on the bench and I think every game we've played I've yelled something at your guys' bench and it's funny because in an intermission, like one of my coaches was like, "Aren't you buddies with those guys?" I'm like, "Yeah, but you forget for 3 periods and get
Yeah.
into the game, and it's fun." But
Yeah, I think that's I don't know. That's a good thing about sport in general. You can go out and be competitive and battle, and after the games, then you shake hands
yeah,
and you're friends, and you can have a beer or talk hockey for hours. And I think that's a special thing about hockey, specifically the coaching fraternity. And I think we have to help each other. And yeah, if you want to continue to learn and evolve as a coach, you have to lean on other people. You can't do it by yourself. So,
yeah, no, I would agree.
and Jonesy's a big part of that. So I appreciate the question.
Yeah, no, I sent him a note yesterday and just said any dirt to put on Rex for our interview, and yeah, he said most prepared coach I've ever seen, and ask him about yelling at his D coach in Airdrie.
No, I appreciate that, Jones. He's one of my best buddies. So I've been lucky to have him as a coach for a long time.
Yeah, I miss having him here for sure. Okay, well that's all I got for you. Been about an hour here. I know you got a busy household there, so I won't keep you too much longer.
No,
Uh,
thanks for having me. I miss seeing you on the bench. It was a lot of fun to coach against you the last couple of years, and hope you land somewhere. I'm sure you will. You got a passion for the game, and you got a lot of support behind you. So
yeah, no, I
I know
appreciate
if you're ever in the Leduc area, we'll find a way to get
it.
together.
Absolutely. Okay, appreciate it, Rex. Thank you.
Okay, pal. Take care.
Yes, yeah.
Bye.